In the 20th century, few figures shaped the world as profoundly, or as terrifyingly, as Joseph Stalin. To some, he was the architect of Soviet industrial power and the leader who defeated Nazi Germany. To others, he was a ruthless dictator whose reign left millions dead in its wake. This is the complex and chilling story of Joseph Stalin, the man who rose from poverty to absolute power, ruled with an iron fist, and left behind a legacy soaked in both triumph and terror. Joseph Stalin was born as Iosif Vissarionovich Dzugashvili on December 18, 1878, or December 6 by the old Julian calendar, in Gori, a small town in Georgia, then part of the Russian Empire. He came from humble beginnings. His father was a shoemaker, often drunk and abusive. His mother, a deeply religious woman, wanted him to become a priest. Stalin attended a church school and later entered the Tiflis Theological Seminary, but he was drawn not to religion, but to revolution. While still a student, Stalin became involved with Marxist ideology and joined underground groups opposing the Tsarist regime. He was expelled from the seminary and began a life of revolutionary activism. He became a member of the Bolshevik faction of the Russian Social Democratic Labor Party, led by Vladimir Lenin. He organized strikes, printed illegal newspapers, and even robbed banks to fund the movement. He was arrested multiple times and exiled to Siberia, but he always returned to the cause. During this time, he adopted the name Stalin, meaning man of steel. In 1917, the Russian Revolution overthrew the Tsar and brought the Bolsheviks to power. After the revolution, Stalin became a key player in Lenin's new government. In 1922, Stalin was appointed General Secretary of the Communist Party, a role that gave him immense influence over party appointments and internal structure. When Lenin fell seriously ill, Stalin used this position to consolidate power behind the scenes. Despite Lenin's warnings about Stalin's growing power and rudeness, Stalin outmaneuvered his rivals after Lenin's death in 1924, most notably Leon Trotsky. By the late 1920s, Stalin had become the undisputed leader of the Soviet Union. Stalin believed the Soviet Union had to industrialize rapidly to survive in a hostile capitalist world. He launched a series of 5-year plans to transform the USSR from a rural economy into an industrial giant. Factories were built, cities expanded, and production quotas soared. The Soviet Union indeed became an industrial power, but at a horrific cost. To fund industrial growth, Stalin forced peasants into collective farms. This led to widespread resistance and a devastating famine, particularly in Ukraine, known as the Holodomor, where millions died. By the mid-1930s, Stalin had become increasingly paranoid. He feared opposition, both real and imagined, and launched the Great Purge, a brutal campaign to eliminate enemies of the state. Millions of people, military leaders, politicians, scientists, artists, ordinary citizens, were arrested, tortured, executed, or sent to gulags, the infamous Soviet labor camps. Show trials were staged. Confessions were coerced. Loyalty was not enough. Stalin's power became absolute, and fear was his most effective weapon. In 1939, Stalin shocked the world by signing the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with Adolf Hitler, a non-aggression treaty that secretly divided Eastern Europe between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. But in 1941, Hitler betrayed Stalin and launched Operation Barbarossa, a massive invasion of the Soviet Union. The USSR was caught off guard and suffered immense losses. Stalin rallied his people and shifted into full wartime command. Under his leadership, Soviet forces defended key cities like Stalingrad, eventually pushing the Nazis back and capturing Berlin in 1945. Stalin emerged from World War II as a victor, and one of the most powerful men on the planet. After the war, Stalin expanded Soviet influence across Eastern Europe, establishing communist regimes and beginning the Cold War with the United States. Behind the Iron Curtain, dissent was crushed, and surveillance was constant. The Soviet Union became a superpower, but the people lived under censorship, fear, and oppression. Stalin grew more isolated and authoritarian in his final years. He distrusted even his closest allies and began new purges. Plans for a new wave of repression were reportedly in motion when, on March 5, 1953, Stalin died of a stroke. His death marked the end of an era, and the beginning of cautious de-Stalinization under Nikita Khrushchev. Stalin ruled the Soviet Union for nearly 30 years. Under his leadership, the USSR became a nuclear power. It defeated Nazi Germany. It industrialized at an unprecedented rate. But this came with famine, gulags, mass executions, widespread fear and censorship. Estimates suggest that 10 to 20 million people died as a direct result of Stalin's policies. And yet, to some, he is still seen as a national hero who made the USSR powerful and respected. His legacy remains deeply controversial, both inside Russia and around the world. Joseph Stalin was a master of power, a dictator who reshaped his country through sheer will and ruthless brutality. He dreamed of building a communist utopia but left behind a society haunted by trauma and authoritarianism. His story is a warning from history, of how a single man's ambition can uplift a nation and destroy countless lives in the process. Death is the solution to all problems. No man, no problem. Joseph Stalin. Let us remember his legacy not to glorify, but to understand, learn, and never forget.